Hey guys, it's Gary here. I'm back with another video. I'll be teaching you guys how to do this.
Animatic.
Tutorial of Flipaclip's new animatics challenge, episode 1. Very first step, I recommend making a storyboard. A storyboard, it could be as complex like this. I have mine done in Clip Paint Studio, but you could simply just use a sheet of paper. Basically plan out your main movements. I'm gonna go into the audio. We're gonna split this animation into parts, that way it's easier for us to animate and focus on one section at a time. Okay, so this is the spot that we're going to be cutting at. To cut this part, just press on the marker and this comes up, and click the second icon and it cuts the audio for us. And let's move the rest onto the second timeline, and let's just disable this. So all we're hearing is just the hopping. We're just going to be focusing on animating that section, and then when we're done, we're gonna do the same thing to the rest of the audio. So the very first thing that we're going to do is establish some sort of horizon that our character Kimochi is going to be hopping through. So let's start by using the pencil tool. You click that and you switch through. Let's take out our ruler and let's just draw a straight line. And make sure that you're drawing it on this. We're going to rename this layer ground layer. Do the same thing on each layer, but what we're going to do is we're going to click this little icon to copy, and we're just going to paste it on all the frames. So let's do a quick sketch of the character. Instead of redrawing him completely, what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this. We're going to paste it onto the next frame, and now we're going to use the lasso tool, and then we're going to move this drawing slightly up, and now we're going to be doing the same thing. As we move on to the second scene, that's when in the storyboard the cake comes in. So before we get to this main movement of the character sniffing the cake, we got to introduce the cake. So let's make this process simple. I'm gonna call this layer just props. So anything that's the cake, anything in the background. So we're done with our very simple cake. We're gonna click the copy button and copy it on all the frames that's coming after. And now let's turn on the audio for the next section. And now let's move the rest onto the next timeline. And also another thing that we'll need to go back to is copy our horizon line as well, since we're on a brand new scene of the animation. Alright guys. So now let's copy our character once more. So to animate our next scene, we need to have the face of the character drawn in. So we're actually gonna go back all the way to the beginning. We're gonna create a new face layer. And we're gonna do the eye shine on the same layer, like this. And so what we're gonna do right now is we're just gonna click copy, and we're just gonna paste this to all of our other layers and adjust it as we go. And we're gonna slowly animate our character's eyes closing. And we're just gonna have the body kind of bounce up and down slightly, so to really show the sniffing motion even though we can't really see it. And onto the next frame, as the character kind of goes down, we see a little bit more of the body once more. Alright guys, we're done with that scene. Let's move on to animating the next scene. I'm gonna keep copying frames until like the talking part. And now we're at the talking part. And now I'm going to copy the eyes from one of these frames. Alright guys, we're done with this scene. Let's move on to the next scene, which is the cake eating scene. As I planned out in my storyboard, so it's around this part. And let's start cutting down our audio. Since so far we've made multiple cuts of the audio. If you can't see the rest, just simply scroll down, and here's the rest of our audio track for our next scenes. So the very first thing we're going to do, like with each scene, is making sure we copy all of our elements into the new frame. For this section, we're going to paste the cake, and then we're actually going to go back and start erasing it as Kimochi starts eating the cake. And for that, we're going to erase a little bit, and we're going to move Kimochi slightly, and we're going to start animating some of the face. As we erase the cake, we start seeing more of Kimochi's face, the mouth. So on this frame, there should just be like crumbs that's left of this. We're gonna erase all the cake scenes that came after the crumbs since we don't need the cake anymore, and we go back and we start animating Kimochi as Kimochi eats the cake. And you guys have a lot of creative freedom with that. I chose to make him go up, and I went back and started to animate more of the facial expression, since as the cake disappears we start seeing Kimochi's face once more. I end up copying a lot of the facial expression from the previous frames to avoid having me to draw a lot of those, and I just erased some parts, and along with the ears I even animate some of the hands as well as Kimochi eats the cake. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy the character's position and face. The next frame, I'm just gonna have a tiny circle, and then I'm gonna have a line making it look like the cheeks are like a little bit puffed up. And we're done with that chewing part. We're gonna be copying the same pose that I did in the storyboard right here, the same facial expression, so the eyes, the wiggly mouth, and then this puff thing. We're gonna put that on the prop layer. And we're gonna be doing like this kind of smiley facial expression, like more like a cheeky smile. Alright guys, we're on to our final scene, which is this in the storyboard. I also suggest locking all of your sound layers so you don't accidentally move them. So let's go to the body layer. Let's copy that. Alright guys, for explosions, we're gonna start with the spiky shape and we build it up with clouds around it. Since it's happening really fast, we have a lot more leeways with our action, and it doesn't have to look exactly the same as mine. Since explosions are dynamic, you get to play around with a lot of the shape as you build it up, and then as it fizzles down. Feel free to pause this video to get a reference of my frames, and let's continue. Alright, so starting around this phase, that's when we're gonna have Kimochi turn around. So right before Kimochi says this line, we hear a siren. To draw this, I used the brush tool and I used the eraser and I lowered the softness of it so to give it the screen look, and I just made it smaller. So the way I animate the helicopter is actually by making 3 versions, alternating the propellers, which is the 2 lines at the top, and alternating between them and copying and pasting the position. This task is tedious. I recommend being a little bit patient since it's a little bit difficult to get it right the first time and playing it back a lot. So you guys can pause this section of the video if you need to. Alright, so now that we've done with the helicopter and alternating the movement, let's go back to animate the final facial expressions. So a little tip on lip syncing from the Animator Survival Kit is we don't need to animate every single syllable. We don't enunciate every single word. Some people, when they speak, they barely open their mouths at all. So that's the trick to this. We don't need to animate every single motion, especially since Kimochi is very soft spoken. So let's copy some of her previous frames. Hold that same facial expression till the end of the animation, so keep pasting. And that's our last frame.
Animatic.
And we're done! And I'd love to see your take on this as well using the hashtag Flipaclip animatic, and leave a link down below as well as any comments and questions, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye!